What if Viking life wasn't all blood, raids, and roaring longships? What if, behind the fearsome image, there was a quieter world, a place of wood and smoke, of children's laughter and the smell of baking bread? Step inside a Viking village, and you'll find something most people never imagine. A tight-knit community where survival depended not on constant battle, but on skill, cooperation, and tradition. Here, every sunrise brought the sound of axes splitting wood, nets being cast into the sea, and blacksmiths hammering iron into tools. The air carried the scent of fresh hay, smoked fish, and pine tar from the ships being built along the shore. These villages were more than just homes. They were living machines, designed to endure harsh winters, feed dozens of mouths, and pass down ancient knowledge from one generation to the next. And behind every door was a story of farmers who could sail, of warriors who wove cloth, of women whose wisdom kept the entire settlement alive. Over the next few minutes, you're going to step into their world. But be warned, once you see what life was really like inside a Viking village, you might never picture the Vikings the same way again. Step through the wooden gates of a Viking village, and the first thing you notice is how alive it feels. It's not a sprawling city. Most villages held only a few dozen families. But every inch of space has a purpose. The houses, called longhouses, stretch low to the ground, built from timber and turf to withstand brutal winds and heavy snow. Their walls are thick, insulated with moss and clay, and the roofs are covered in thatch or sod, making them blend almost seamlessly into the surrounding landscape. Inside, there's a single large room where the family eats, works, and sleeps, with a fire pit in the center that's never allowed to go out. The smoke escapes through a small hole in the roof, but not before curling through the air and soaking the walls with the scent of wood fire. Around the longhouses are small barns, animal pens, and storehouses raised on stilts to keep food dry and safe from rats. Narrow paths wind between them, muddy in spring, frozen hard in winter. At the heart of the village, there's usually a communal space, part market, part meeting area, where news is shared, trades are made, and decisions are settled. The village isn't placed randomly. It's chosen for survival, close enough to the sea or a river for fishing and trade, but near fertile land for crops and livestock. Many are protected by natural barriers, forests, hills, or cliffs that shield them from both storms and enemies. And while it might seem peaceful, everything about the layout is built with defense in mind. Boats are kept ready on the shore, weapons close at hand, and watchmen posted on high ground. In the Viking world, danger could arrive with the tide, but most days here aren't about war. They're about survival, cooperation, and the rhythm of the seasons. The village is a living organism, and each person is one of its vital parts. And as dawn turns to day, the sound of work begins to rise. Because inside these walls, everyone has a role to play. If you think this setting feels alive, wait until you see what happens when we step into the daily routine, where every hour is filled with tasks that keep the village running, and no one is ever truly idle. From the moment the first light breaks over the horizon, a Viking village comes to life. There's no sleeping in. Every able body has a role, and the day's survival depends on it. Men often start with the heaviest tasks. In the summer, they head to the fields with plows pulled by oxen, turning the earth for barley, rye, and oats. Others march down to the shore to cast nets or haul in lines baited for cod, herring, or salmon. The blacksmith is already at his forge, hammering out nails, axes, and the occasional sword, the rhythmic clang echoing across the settlement. Women's work is no less demanding. They tend to the cooking fires, prepare meals, and churn butter from the morning's milk. They weave wool into thick, warm cloth on vertical looms, dye it with plant pigments, and stitch it into tunics, cloaks, and sails. Many also manage the farms in the men's absence. Viking women were skilled in trade, law, and negotiation when needed. Children, even at a young age, are part of the cycle. Boys learn to carve wood, mend nets, and handle small livestock. Girls master cooking, sewing, and herb lore, knowledge passed from mother to daughter for generations. Play exists, but often doubles as training. Mock sword fights, racing boats made from scraps of wood, or learning how to track animals in the forest. The elderly are the keepers of memory. Too old for heavy labor, they sit near the fire, telling sagas and reciting poetry, passing on the myths of gods and heroes. They are living libraries, and their stories shape the village's sense of identity and pride. Life here is structured, but it's never dull. The pace changes with the seasons: frantic fishing in summer, harvest in autumn, preservation and repair work through the long, dark winter. The entire community pivots together, each person's effort feeding into the survival of the whole. And when the work slows, the village shifts into something more vibrant: shared meals, music, and storytelling under flickering torchlight. But to truly understand the heart of this community, you need to taste it. Because in a Viking village, food isn't just sustenance. It's culture, celebration, and a mark of prosperity. And what they actually ate might surprise you. Forget the image of Vikings tearing into giant turkey legs. Real Viking meals were far more varied, clever, and tied to the land and sea around them. In the quiet hours before dawn, the first pot goes over the fire, a thick porridge made from barley or oats, sweetened with honey if it's available. For those heading out to fish or work the fields, this was fuel for the day. Bread, baked on flat stones or in clay ovens, was another staple, dense, dark, and meant to last for days. Fish was a constant on the table. Fresh catches like herring, cod, or salmon were eaten quickly, while the surplus was salted, smoked, or even dried into stockfish to last through the winter. Meat came less often, but when it did, pork, lamb, beef, it was savored, often stewed with root vegetables like turnips, carrots, and leeks. Hunting brought venison, wild birds, and the occasional boar, but that was a treat, not an everyday meal. Preservation was everything. Vikings mastered smoking, fermenting, and salting long before refrigeration, turning short harvests into year-round supplies. Dairy also played a big role. Milk, cheese, and skyr, a tangy yogurt-like product, added protein and fat to the diet. And then there were the feasts. When a ship returned from a successful voyage, during seasonal festivals, or after a big harvest, the village would come together for a celebration that could last days. Mead, fermented honey, flowed freely, along with ale brewed from barley. Tables groaned under roasted meats, fresh breads, and the best preserved goods from the storehouses. These gatherings weren't just about indulgence. They were about reinforcing bonds, telling stories, and honoring the gods with offerings of food and drink. Hospitality was a sacred duty. A traveler arriving in the village could expect to be fed before being asked a single question. Sharing food was a sign of wealth, generosity, and respect, and refusing to share could mark you as dishonorable. In a Viking village, meals were about more than survival. They were moments of connection, symbols of trust, and opportunities to display the abundance that hard work, and sometimes luck, had brought. But beyond food and drink, there was another layer to daily life, one that shaped how Vikings saw the world, made decisions, and even explained the storms at sea and the turn of the seasons. To truly step inside a Viking village, you need to understand what they believed. In a Viking village, belief wasn't something separate from daily life. It was woven into every action, every season, every sound of the wind. The Norse saw the world as a vast, interconnected web. Above was Asgard, the realm of the gods. Below, the icy depths of Niflheim, and in between, Midgard, the human world, held together by the great tree Yggdrasil. Every river, every mountain, and every animal had its place and purpose in this cosmic order. The gods were part of the village's rhythm. Odin, the All-Father, was honored for wisdom and victory. Thor, the Protector, for storms and strength. Frey and Freya for fertility and prosperity. Offerings of food, carved wooden idols, or even weapons might be placed at small shrines within the village or at sacred groves nearby. Festivals marked the turning of the year. In midwinter, during Yule, fires blazed through the long, dark nights, celebrating the return of the sun. In spring, rituals asked for good harvests, with dances, songs, and sometimes animal sacrifices to ensure the gods' favor. These were not just religious acts, they were essential for morale, binding the community together under shared hopes and fears. Superstition lived alongside faith. A raven circling above could be an omen from Odin. A sudden storm might be Thor's displeasure. Charms of bone or amber were worn to protect against illness, misfortune, or hostile spirits. And always, there was the belief in fate, woven by the Norns, three mysterious beings who determined the path of every life. Storytelling was the lifeblood of belief. Around the fire, elders and skalds, poets, recited sagas of gods, heroes, and monsters. These tales weren't just entertainment. They carried moral lessons, warnings, and the history of the people, passed down without a single written word. But belief also guided justice and order. Oaths were sworn before the gods, and breaking them was more than a crime. It was a spiritual offense that could curse not just an individual, but their family. Faith in the gods, respect for omens, and loyalty to tradition gave meaning to every aspect of Viking life. And at the heart of it all was the community itself, a network of trust and rules that held the village together in a world that could turn hostile without warning. Which brings us to the final piece of life inside a Viking village: the laws, the gatherings, and the unshakable sense of belonging that defined their legacy. Life in a Viking village wasn't lawless. It ran on a code as strong as any fortress wall. At the center of this order was the Thing, the open-air assembly where free men gathered to settle disputes, make decisions, and uphold justice. It wasn't just politics. It was a public ritual, with everyone knowing that the community's peace depended on fairness and honor. Disputes over land, accusations of theft, or broken promises were brought before the Thing. Witnesses spoke, evidence was weighed, and verdicts were given. Punishments ranged from fines paid in silver or livestock to the harshest penalty of all: exile. In a world where survival meant belonging, being cast out was almost a death sentence. Community bonds were everything. Neighbors worked together to repair roofs before winter storms, shared food in times of scarcity, and joined forces for fishing, hunting, or building ships. Every success was celebrated as a collective victory. Every tragedy mourned together. Over time, these villages left more than artifacts and ruins. They passed on a way of life built on resilience, shared responsibility, and a deep respect for both human bonds and the natural world. A Viking village was more than a cluster of wooden houses. It was a living heartbeat of cooperation, tradition, and survival. The raids may have carved their place in history, but it was here, in the smoke and song of the village, that the Vikings truly became who they were. And perhaps that's the part of their story worth remembering most.